And whenever you're ready, begin softening your body, quieting your mind, notice if there's a sense of momentum from your day, and allow that to slow down. Begin to find a sense of comfort and ease in your body. And in the very least, as you rest here, notice whether or not you are able to simply be here, not trying to do anything or get anything or change something, make force happen in the world. But instead, if you can, what does it feel like to simply soften and be here and be okay with just being here? And then just being here some more. For the next 5 minutes or so, simply being present. Notice any momentum behind your mind, trying to force change or get something or to be something. And instead, simply be at rest. Just sitting here, practicing contentment. Notice if your body is continuing to grip and maintain any patterns from earlier in the day. Maybe if you were carrying groceries or your backpack or a heavy purse and you were gripping, and now that you're sitting here, you're still carrying those heavy objects. And if you can notice, and then as you exhale through your mouth, you allow those patterns to release. Allow them to fall away from your body. if you were having a conversation earlier or doing some heavy mental work, maybe you notice that your mind is continuing with that cycle, that process. There's momentum. You're still having this argument or still trying to work through a problem. And same thing as you exhale, you simply let that fall away. Notice the stillness in the moment. A couple more minutes. Notice any restrictions around your breath. Instead of forcing your breath to become deeper or slower, instead, notice the restrictions, the obstructions. And then as you exhale, you let them go. You make more space so the breath comes in a bit deeper on its own the next time. And then when you're ready, softening and warming your hands. Bring some life into your palms, qi into your hands. And then using that qi to activate the crown of your head. Gentle circles. Continuing to soften your hands, softening your shoulder. Your thumb just along the line below the ridge of your skull. The rest of your hand on the back of your head in general. Warming and easing this area. And then all along the side, back of your neck, and especially the base of your neck. Continuing until the space feels warm and seems to radiate that warmth from the inside. And of course, for all of the movements in this set, in case you haven't heard about it yet, the awareness and the pressure is reaching not deep into the muscles or to the bone necessarily, but rather to that space just between the skin and the muscles, or between the skin and the bone. To that membrane space between the fascial layer And as always, if you are joining us for the first time and you're not quite sure what we're doing or the rules of this set, please check down below and watch the video introduction that I made, which will teach you how to do this set appropriately to get the best results. As well, there's a list of the names of the form and the number of repetitions, the points that we work on, and that will help you to get the best results from your practice. Warmth from the hands, soaking in around the eyes, softening behind the eyes. As we begin these movements, you may find it that it's as though your mind is rusty or stiff and it's unable to soak into the body easily. And it may not have as much to do with this area of your body as just your mind taking time to soften enough to start to become aware of your body. And if you notice that, then maybe go slower, pause, and spend extra time at these early points until your mind starts to sink in to that space between the skin and the bone, or the skin and the muscle, so that you don't miss out on letting your awareness soak into this part of your body, because we do this part early in the set. And so sometimes that means that it gets less effective treatment, because by the time we get down to the middle of our body, we're much more in the zone and our mind is clear. So make the adjustments, whatever it is that you need, in order to allow each of these spaces to be as well treated as the rest of your body. We start at the top because we want to always allow our qi to sink down thoroughly. You don't ever want to end at the top because that will pull your qi up and cause imbalances. Always releasing any tension that may accumulate in your hands or your shoulders, your back, in between each movement. It'll be different for everybody. So if you need to shake it out or pause even longer between movements, please do so that there's never this continuous buildup of tension through the form. Soothing all of that tension that tends to gather in this area of the body. Smoothing the tissues out like you're ironing. In fact, these movements are called things like ironing the eyes or ironing the eyebrows. And there's this quality of smoothing the wrinkles. And these wrinkles are folds, they're scars that occur in the tissue because things are constantly creasing until it damages them. And the fascial layer beneath it also becomes damaged. And so we're trying to smooth and allow it to begin to heal, pushing fluids through these areas that are often completely obstructed. So please take the time to soften through all of these tissues. Especially if you're somebody who tends to grip, in between their eyebrows. You'll see people with deep furrows there, either vertically or horizontally in their forehead. Frown lines, laugh lines. These are all things that, in a way, become scars. And we want to help to circulate and help to heal that tissue from a lifetime of wear and tear. Through this gentle, consistent application of a reminder to flatten and straighten out, to allow circulation to travel through it again. And it's especially effective if you're able to allow your mind to penetrate into the space beneath the surface, feeling inside your body, just a millimeter or two inside. If you've done your research and you've looked up each of these points that we practice, again, the list is down below. And you can allow yourself to be more accurate about the space that you're connecting to, then the practice becomes that much more curative, helpful in unwinding the tissues. Continuing to soften your hands. Allow the warmth and the softness and the gentleness of your hands to communicate with the tissues. Your hands getting softer throughout this whole set is one of the wonderful side effects of this practice, something we want to encourage. Don't touch your body with tension, only the soft, friendly, loving touch. Warmth soaking in. Using the warmth and the pressure from your light touch to help guide that space between the skin and the bone and the places where there isn't much muscle, or the places between the skin and the muscle and the places where there's enough flesh there. Basically just the space of wonderful circulation immediately beneath the skin. And in some places, you'll feel, as you become more sensitive, your awareness gathers and dives deep at certain points. It happens on its own. And those are some particular points that happens at. So here along the neck, as we move down from the outside toward the front, helping to soothe and open these tissues here, there's a lot of flesh here. You won't really make contact with the bone, but you can feel the space, in this case, between the skin and the muscle, or between the skin and the tendon, around the arteries. And your awareness, as it soaks into these places, will come in contact with all of the fun fluid movement, all of the plumbing that happens beneath. There's a lot of variation beneath there. But the main idea is that you don't want to either be too superficial or go too deep, either with your touch or your awareness. Just stay locally and allow your awareness to spread out on its own. It's too easy to focus on like massaging the muscles or pushing against the bone or squeezing the skin, because the fascial layer is invisible to most of us in the beginning. We have to allow our awareness to soak in. Funnily enough, it's also one of the easier layers to begin to learn about, to feel inside your body, because it's just beneath the skin, and the contact from your hands and your fingers easily reaches there. And then as you close, you can allow your awareness to gather around the navel, the belly, and begin to soak into the navel, behind the navel, flowing into the space in the center of the body, halfway to the spine. If you can't quite feel in the space in the middle, perhaps you can let your awareness go all the way back to touch the spine. It's okay. But feeling for that space that's deeper in this case. If you allow your awareness to accumulate there, and I know that for some of you after these 75 days, we're 3/4 of the way through the 100-day series. Congratulations for those of you who have done it. And if you've been continually allowing your awareness to settle and accumulate here, you probably notice a change of sensation in this area. Hopefully not too strong. We don't want strong sensations yet. But a sense of pressure or warmth or movement or lightness. It's different for a lot of people. But as your awareness rests there and you're just breathing normally, not trying to breathe, because that always causes problems. Instead, you're breathing, allowing the breath to happen, getting out of the way so that the breath sinks down in the body. Your awareness at that space between the navel and the spine, it can often feel like you're blowing on a hot coal and it lights up a little bit as it warms. As your awareness rests there, and qi gathers, and it begins to create this dantian. In the beginning, we just have a field, we just have a tian with no dan, with no elixir, no medicine is there. So we shape it and then allow our awareness to accumulate there. And that's the only space that we go deep during this particular form. When your mind wanders away, remember that again, like with the breath, you don't want to force the breath, you don't want to force the mind. Your mind will naturally follow this practice as long as it's not being agitated and distracted. So when it is distracted, notice the distraction. First, don't react. And then lose interest in the distraction. And you'll feel it fade, turn into nothing. And then your awareness will come back to what's happening. I know some of you deal with lots of phlegm during this time of year. It's a very unpopular subject, I know. But if you're experiencing a lot of phlegm, perhaps in the lungs, for instance, this lung 5 point here can be very helpful for that. So by spending extra time nourishing and opening this space, it's not just beneficial for the fascia and the joint, but it's part of the microcosm of the body that allows that phlegm in the lungs in particular to begin to transform. In case that's an issue for you. Remember to do all 3 points here on the forearm. The elbow joint, a couple inches below that, and an inch or so below that. And when I say inch, I mean sun, body inches. So very long and tall people, their body inches are a bit longer. For very, very small people, their inches get a bit shorter. So not following a ruler, following your body. the inner and the outer gate. I've been having some difficulty connecting with these points this week. I only mention it because I want people to recognize when they're having difficulties at places. And so I spend more time here. I just noticed that even though my mind is resting in this place, I don't have the sense of softening and spreading, warmth, at least not as quickly as I do at other points. And so I move both directions. So I would try different spots to connect with it. Maybe my palm would work better. Maybe a faster, slower circle. And then, so now I'm feeling it into my palm, spread up my arm, around my wrist, to the points on the front and the back, connecting. And then I can move on. But you won't be able to make that adjustment until you begin to allow your mind to pay attention to what's going on inside your body. And remember that this aspect of your chi is part of your mind. This is that which allows your awareness to move inside your body. They're not separate things. It's all one thing. The words that we use make it sound like we're talking about different things, but we're not. And that's often where some confusion comes in. So by letting your awareness soak into a place and actually feeling that place, that's part of what you're saying, is that is the chi is moving in that space. It's the reason why we emphasize the awareness, because sometimes it's easier talking about that than talking about chi, because for some reason people think they're all different things. The whole body mind is one continuous flow. We're just picking single sections of a river and saying that part instead of that part over there. But really, it's all one experience. Easing through. Similarly, as you work with the fingers, for instance, because you may remember there are no muscles in the fingers the way we think about muscles. There's hair muscles, but no moving muscles. And so as your awareness soaks into these spaces, you can feel the skin. You perhaps can feel the bone, not just with your hand, but from the inside. Perhaps you feel warmth and blood flow. And some other aspect, a layer, that as that warmth and your awareness spreads out around the finger, there's a different kind of experience. And you have to be able to differentiate, oh, this is a skin feeling. This is a bone feeling. This is a muscle feeling. This is a fascial feeling. Connective tissue, you can feel the tendons, the attachments. You can feel your body. You just have to learn how to listen, to sense appropriately. this point here, up on the edge of the shoulder, as it leads down around the pectoralis or the breast toward the armpit area. The space up in here, there's some lung points. These are also very beneficial for clearing phlegm in the lung. Sometimes I find it helpful to dangle this arm as I soften up here. It helps to pull the tissues open a little bit more easily. I try not to move or change shape too often because I know it can become visually confusing, especially if you have me on a little screen. That's one of the reasons I try to relatively hold in the same position, so it's easier to follow. But if you need to move and dangle and adjust and shift and find a way to connect to points in a relaxed way, please feel free to do it. You don't have to copy me. Again, lung 5. This point named after a marsh, a swamp, in part because of how soft it feels, in part because of the various categories of the points that we won't get into, but in part because it deals with this quality of the moisture, the phlegm, and the lungs. This kind of fluid that doesn't really move, it just sits there. So it heats up and it causes problems. It's very swampy in the lungs when that happens. And so the name of this point, in part, is a clue. Your awareness soaks in to this soft space. And then again, these 3 points on the forearm, you take your time, especially again, if you're working on the arm that contains more tension, then please do find extra time to help it release. Another suggestion that if you're having trouble connecting with a point, for instance, the way I was describing these points between the tendons here, how it was a bit difficult for the chi to move easily for me, for whatever reason, I use my hands and arms a lot, that you might find that if you just do something like this, gently helping circulation reach these areas, or maybe you skip this point and do the other practice and then come back to it. Sometimes that will help wake it up before you try to get in there. So feel free to adjust the sequence Add a few extra things. Maybe you swing your arms for a little while to help them soften and help circulation gather. Maybe you have to go and put your arms in warm water if your hands have been very cold. I say all these things because I want people to learn how to find the practice for themselves and not just copy the practice. To know when it's working versus when they're just sitting here, poking at themselves. Softening the wrist, the heart, and small intestine channels, easing them open. This point here on the hand, large intestine 4, that we work on a lot, can be useful for phlegm as well, but it's mostly for a congestion style phlegm. Phlegm up in your sinuses, for instance. That can be very helpful. Taking the time to settle. Everything sinks through your body, filling the belly, and letting your awareness soak in. Don't push your mind. Just let it gather there on its own. Getting better and better at allowing your mind to rest in that space, and to do it without holding onto your mind, but instead by being disinterested in distraction, not letting your mind get agitated and caught up, but instead just constantly letting it fall back and fall back without effort. And after a while, it just rests there. The more you push it there, the more energy wants to rush up to your head or into your chest. Just stay restful. And for those of you who practice methods like Tai Chi or Bagua, Xing Yi Quan, one of the stages of practice to aim for is the capacity to do an entire form or an entire set with your mind always resting here without being disturbed. It's a very important accumulation method. Drink some of my tea. The solar plexus is one of those areas that once your mind begins to soak into that fascial layer, it spreads out but also tends to dive deep. And you don't want to try to push your mind deep, but simply let your awareness spread out with the warmth, the movement, however it shows up for you. It'll be different for everybody. And you want to allow that process to make it very obvious what these tissues are like beneath here. Space between that point and the navel, zhongguan. As you warm and nourish that point, emphasize this sense of nourishing that space. Your awareness soaks in, but something about this point tends to really appreciate gentle, warming nourishment. It also dives deeply into the body. If your body has weak digestion and tends to form phlegm, then this is one point that's worth working on regularly to keep the digestion nourished. It doesn't so much transform and change phlegm, but it does help to drain off some of the moisture and help the body avoid creating it by nourishing the system that when the system is strong enough, it doesn't generate phlegm in the first place. Similarly, a point in the chest that we had rubbed before, for most male bodies, it's directly between the nipples in the center here. Sometimes if you poke around, there will be a sore spot that feels obvious, where there's a point there on the sternum. And you can work that point in whatever context you like. We are doing it this way, just to warm the whole sternum, but you can also use your fingertips there if you like. And that helps to open the chest and transform phlegm again in the lungs, just by creating openness and movement in this area. It's very useful to understand how phlegm forms in the body, especially, again, this time of year with allergies and such. And so you can take the time that you need to help these spaces open. You need to be gentle, because often phlegm will form because of a deep deficiency, kind of exhaustion. So your digestive system isn't functioning well. Your ability to circulate fluids isn't functioning well, so it just sits there and congeals and turns into phlegm. And so if you're too active, too aggressive, you just disperse the body more and weaken it further. So this very gentle, nourishing, light quality that we're working at developing with this particular form can help a lot. Continuously softening. Your mind soaking in, which is a way of bringing qi to these points, these areas. Sense of friendliness helping to ease the emotional tension in these spaces. Making room for the breath, which helps to spread the qi out even more. Very effective method. But you have to be regular with it. And of course, by nourishing and warming the middle dantian space, it strengthens the qi of the whole body, which of course is beneficial for phlegm. These points here that move across the navel benefit the digestion, which benefits phlegm by helping you avoiding generating it. But not all phlegm is in the lungs and sinuses. Sometimes it accumulates lower in the body, which is kind of damp, turbid dampness, thick, murky, that swampy quality can develop in the lower body. And so these points that are here and the organs that are so good at draining all of that stuff here, by nourishing these areas, you're helping the body's ability to clear that stuff out. We don't have to try to help them clear it out. Sometimes it can be a kind of addiction to try to purge the body all the time, but that tends to weaken the body. So instead, we nourish the parts of the body that do that for us. We nourish the kidneys, we nourish the intestines, the liver. We strengthen the body, and it becomes better at cleansing itself. That way you avoid getting stuck on the obsessive loop of purging the body all the time. It's not good for you. Heal the body, let it purge itself. And you don't have to sit like this. I just do this to make it easy to see on camera. For a lot of people, leaning back like this will be uncomfortable. For me, it's easy. But please don't throw yourself into weird contortions. I just do this so that people can see it on camera. Got it today? Continuing to soften your hands, softening your shoulders. If you need to change hands once in a while, you can do that. And again, if you need a refresher about which points we're doing, there is a list down below with the names of all the points. I think I also list them in the introductory video, which is down there. So if you're ever confused about what you're doing, please just reference those. Yeah, for me now, today, the base of the thumb on these points here seems very nourishing and softening. Maybe the palm feels even better. So you take your time. Find what works for you today. Stomach 34 point, just above and to the outside of the knee here. The head of this section of the quadriceps muscles. Today, the heel of my hand feels the best. And again, I only mention what feels good to me and what's going on with me because I want people to pay attention to what's working for them. It's my way of encouraging you to not listen to me. Spleen 10, liver 8. Gallbladder 34 on the outside here. Wonderful point. And now another useful point for the dampness that leads to phlegm is this spleen 9 point here. So even though within this set, the outside point, the gallbladder 34 point, is the main point that we tend to aim to stimulate, the one on the inside is just the secondary point that's useful to get also. But it's worth learning about this point and nourishing that if excessive moisture in your system tends to be an ongoing problem. This be maybe my favorite dampness point. And then again, stomach 36, such a wonderful point for so many things. Very nourishing to the digestive system that tends to get overwhelmed and creates damp. Circling around the kneecap, warming. If you're been doing this for a little while and you're developing skill, your fingers can also touch those points around as you connect. But more importantly, your awareness, the warmth of your awareness soaks into the tissues here. I know that's a weird way of talking about it, but it can feel like the mind is a fluid and it connects and moves inside the body. At least that's a very common way of describing the experience. I can't be the only one. And as well here, that point behind the knee, in the fold of the knee, between those two tendons, spend some time working on that. Not for phlegm, but one of my very favorite points for treating lower back pain. And I know many of the people that find their way to my channel come for back pain. So it's always worth emphasizing this point. And then, as a side note, not a point we often emphasize, but we do connect with it as we practice. And this is my favorite point for phlegm on the entire body. Stomach 40. If I divide the length of this part of my knee between the ankle and the knee in half, just on the outer edge of this shin muscle, the anterior tibialis, it's a couple fingers away from the shin on most people. It's just halfway up. It's often a very sore point for people who have lots of phlegm. It is amazingly helpful for transforming phlegm anywhere in the body, but especially in the lungs. Softening the calf, easing the Achilles. Take as long as you need at any particular point. But here, as we soften that muscle next to the shin, just gently letting our fingers open and help it circulate. You can find that point in the middle, on the outer edge of that muscle. I'm so used to it, my fingers can just find it in any direction. It has a particular feel to it. And then find this point in the center of the muscle. Stomach 38 and 40. Center of the muscle, outside of the muscle. Working your fingers. The point in the middle of the muscle is the one that's my favorite. And then softening above the ankle. And the foot. Fingertips, softening the calf, the Achilles. If these are areas of special need for you, please take longer with them than I'm spending with them. And then just for today, that point again in the center, middle of the muscle along this length. I think I phrased it strangely last time. The space from here to here, find the midpoint, find the middle of the muscle. It gets often a sore spot. That one and the point off the edge of the muscle can be very helpful. And you soften all the way along the line of this stomach channel. Getting nice and comfortable. Washing the legs. Remember that we are not trying to stretch. I repeat this because I know we have new people all the time following. We're softening along and lengthening the legs, lengthening the chin. Is the body pulling back? So if you go until that point, the movement you do, you're just training the body to pull back. Instead, stop just before then, where there's this sense of continuous lengthening and softening of the body. Shoulders stay soft, folding from the hips, not trying to touch your toes. If you only go to your knees, that's perfectly fine. Softening all the way up to your hips. Remember, your legs need to be relaxed. We're not trying to wear ourselves out or warm ourselves up. If you warm up, it should be because circulation is increasing out because you're pressuring your body. Take your time. As you gather, stay soft. Your hips are released, your spine lengthens so that the neck releases, your shoulders soften as your hands come up. You fall over, lengthening your spine. Don't fold and pull yourself down. Don't tighten your thighs. Turning your hands, gently gripping with your feet. There's no good word to say grip that is without tension, but see if you can make that shape with your feet without causing tension. Whatever that word would be. Consolidating your feet, closing them. Going only as far as you're able to without pulling or hunching or tightening your body. It's like the stretching. If you just go far enough so that your body starts to pull back and clench, then all you're practicing is pulling back and clenching. Don't do it. Get better at softening. Go only as far as you like. If you would like to lie flat, if you're in a spot that's comfortable and warm, don't lie on a cold floor, please. Feel free to do it. Remember that if you need to put something beneath your knees or your lower back or your elbows or under your head, it's all perfectly good. You want to be able to soften comfortably, letting everything go, falling to the floor, and letting your awareness spread out through your body. Feeling that space of the fascial layer from the bottom of your feet all the way to the palms of your hands throughout your body. When you'd like, whenever you feel ready. If you'd like to sit up, you're fully welcome to. Sit up in a way that's safe so you don't tweak your back or anything. Often as our body softens, it can become a little easier to move in a funny way, so please be careful. And take a moment to again settle your awareness into that space between the navel and the spine, middle dantian. And then it expands out your awareness throughout your body, spreading out through the space around you so that your awareness is grounded in your body, but includes everything around you. An anchored awareness. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you coming. Fleming, great class. Thanks, guys. You both asked great questions. I appreciate you here. I will hang out, wait for a few questions. There's always a big time across. It seems like 30 seconds to a minute for my video to reach you, and then of course time for you to type, and then for it to come back to me. So please be patient. And remember your homework. Soften often, continuously come back, let go, let your awareness sink into your body. Thanks for all of the hearts and things. I don't know who's doing it, but I appreciate it. Oh, it's a Mel. It's always the Mel. Oops. So there's a question about how I deal with stress and overwhelm. It's a very good question. I wish Mel was up here. She would probably give a better answer for the moment. Honestly, it's been about 7 years or something that I can remember since I last felt stressed. So genuinely, the cure, the overall cure, I'll answer it in two parts. One is the cure, which is becoming anchored in the present moment, learning how to soften, to allow your emotions to be free, to not grip. And the part of our nature that can become stressed and overwhelmed and tries to control the universe. That's what overwhelm means, is I've run out of control and run out of energy to try to control the world, if that's what you mean. And the cure, there is a cure for that. And it's usually through meditation and deep practice. And it really does work. But of course, that's not always immediately available to everybody. So it's not always the best response to give. And so first, like I did a couple of days ago, I always want to make sure that everybody hears that if they are in genuinely overwhelmed and dangerous point, they just feel like they can't cope, like things are just too much. I think it's really important to recognize that none of us do any of this alone. Not me, not, I have help from my teachers and people like Mel. We all help each other. That's what community is for. It's one of the reasons I try to create these spaces, because community is so huge. It's key. In Taoism, they talk about these 4 treasures, basically, one more than in Buddhism. There's the teaching, the teacher, and the group. And we also talk about a means, an ability to study, like a place to live and that kind of thing. Usually also like a monastery. But in both systems, Buddhism and Taoism, the most important is the Sangha, the group of people that you're with. The community is hugely important. And so for people who are feeling overwhelmed and stressed, please do remember to reach out to people around you, friends, family. And if you don't have those, because sometimes that's the reason people feel stressed and overwhelmed, is because they don't have those things, then please do find like a pro, somebody who spends their life talking about this stuff. Because in those moments when things are just too hard, sometimes people take the easy way out, what seems the easy way out. And so all I want to say out loud is to remind anybody who's feeling that to please reach out to somebody, because I know that, especially for at least the culture that I'm in, people talk about it like it's a weakness to reach out for help. You should be able to handle this stuff on your own. And that is such a wide load of BS that it's almost impossible to talk about. And so I just want to make sure there's a voice out there saying that that's ridiculous. That doesn't mean anything to anybody. Everybody needs help. And so I'm lucky enough to have it in my life. Some people aren't. And so when you aren't, then you find it through a phone or online. And so please do make sure you have those resources for those times when you do need the help. I just want to say that. And so the biggest thing to always do first when we're starting to feel stressed and overwhelmed is first to not judge ourselves for it. The first thing to do is to allow it to happen. Because we're already in pain. We don't then have to add this extra pain of going, look at me, I'm in pain. I'm a terrible person because I'm in pain. And it's amazing that we do that. And we have an entire culture built around it. Whole religions are based entirely upon that, making us feel bad about our feeling bad. So that insanity aside, first, don't react. It's like the same practice we have here. There's a distraction. The first thing we do is don't react to it. If we notice ourselves thinking terrible thoughts about our own terrible feelings, first, don't react. First, don't add anything to that pile, if you can. And if you do, don't react to that. Don't add a spiral of, I dislike myself for being in pain. Like, if I say it that way, can you hear how silly that is? I'm hurting, which is like the most human thing ever. Therefore, I'm bad because I'm hurting or something like that. That's not what life is like. Like, we have pain. That's just part of our existence. And so first, just going, okay, I'm in pain. Okay, I'm angry. I'm sad. I feel lost. I feel exhausted. I feel overwhelmed. First, we notice it. And then we recognize what's happening. And give yourself a little bit of grace there. Like, don't just be like, wow, this is really hard. This is super painful. Wow. And that's the first step. And that's often the biggest thing, because that keeps it from becoming a spiral. Because otherwise it's just this echo chamber of, I'm in pain. I'm bad because I'm in pain, which makes me more in pain, which makes me feel worse about myself for being in pain. And that spiral is often what ends in tragedy for people, because they don't know how to stop. The way to stop is just like we practice during class. And remember to practice when it's easier. Don't wait until it's really hard to practice that ability. Get good at going, oh, my mind is making noise. I look at it and go, huh, and I don't react and I come back. That skill is what serves you during those hard times. It's like training in the martial arts. You train when it's easy, so that when it's hard, it's just in you. You know how to do it. You train the mind when it's easy. We're comfortable and relaxed. We come back because it's comfortable, it's easy. And during those hard times, it's easy for our mind to go, oh, okay, I'm going to not react to those negative thoughts, so that it doesn't turn into a spiral. That's really important. And that, if people took that on, that would be life-changing right there, because instantly you would no longer spiral into a really dark place, because that's how that happens. Seeking help when you need it, reaching out, which, of course, some people are here for that. And then don't react. Don't feel bad about feeling bad. And then in that state, now you have the chance to actually work with what's going on, because these things it's a kind of illness. It's just an emotional illness. In the same way that elbow pain, it's a kind of, there's a treatment for elbow pain. If I had a headache, there's a treatment for that. If I have heartache, at least in Western culture, often that's less well known how to treat it, but there are treatments for that too. And so then we begin to apply the appropriate medicine. Sometimes that medicine is going for a walk, a good, long, comfortable walk, and you just be easy. Sometimes it means watching a comedy show or something, or going and hanging out with a friend and having a good cry. These are all great things. Just, if you need to let it out, it's fine. Be careful with anger. If you release anger and rage, that tends to damage you on the way out. So crying is safer. If you're sad and you want to have a cry, that's fine. That's safer. It's a little exhausting, but it doesn't like explode and damage you on the way out. So you want to be careful about how you release different emotions. And when it's done, like after you have like for instance, if you're crying for a little while, you might notice there's a line in there where you've released the edge on some of your grief. And at some point in there, you could just sort of stop and start to heal and go for a walk and take a nap and go do other things. But then there's the people they start like digging into it and they kind of pull it out because they want to feel more. And that also is destructive. So you have to understand how to listen again to your own system, where you release enough so that you can start to heal it and find balance again. But if you start to dig in with a shovel and try to make yourself feel worse and worse, then that also is, again, part of that same cycle where we make ourselves feel bad for feeling bad. And so all of these levels of balance are required. And recognizing that these emotions are just weather patterns of qi in the body. Sometimes people are anxious not because they're anxious about anything, but they have, from the perspective of Chinese medicine, they have heat in the heart. Maybe they're on a medication or something. This is really common. Plenty of people will take a contraceptive. And from Chinese medicine's perspective, it adds heat to their heart. And so they just feel anxious all the time. But they're not anxious about anything. And the mistake of that is to then say, oh, I must be anxious about my job. Or maybe I'm anxious about my relationship. Oh, I wonder if my partner is cheating on me. I must be anxious about something. Maybe it means I'm psychic and my subtle awareness is trying to tell me something. And so they start to cause problems in their lives. When really it's just that they're having this sensation because of a, medication they're taking or something like that. So beginning to recognize how to apply the appropriate medicine is really important. You can aim for a cure, which is what a lot of these meditative and healing systems do. And I always want to encourage people to move toward genuinely being free of things like stress. You become free of the part of you that can become stressed in that way. And to recognize what to do when it's really bad, both ends of the spectrum here. But most people are in here someplace and starting to recognize what's causing it, what's making you feel bad. Maybe you have a super toxic job, and maybe just the easiest thing to do is go get a different job so you don't have to deal with that. and that's an easy fix. Sometimes people will genuinely feel bad from something that they eat. I lived in Yosemite National Park for a couple of years, and one of my close friends there, a wonderful person, she was terribly allergic to gluten. And for her, and she discovered this when she was young, she had been terribly depressive. And she was being treated for deep depression as a kid. And at some point, someone said, gluten sensitivity for some people can cause depression. And so she gave up gluten and her emotions cleared up. And as long as I knew her, she was a very happy, positive person. And I think at one point she had gotten exposed again and her emotions darkened really quickly. That was just how it worked for her. And so going, oh, that can be a cause. And then that's a way out. And so recognizing how to treat an illness is a really important part of these things. And so we have the extreme ends that we work with, the extreme healing or the extreme illness. But most people are in here, and learning how to navigate that space is really important. But the very first advice always is to just accept that you're having a hard time. Just be like, it's okay to feel bad. That's okay. I'm feeling really anxious today. I'm super angry today. And just to go, okay, I don't know why I'm feeling angry, and not say, oh, I am anger. Like I'm an angry person. That's like saying if you have a cold, I am a person that is cold, or, that has this, I am one who is sick, instead of just saying, oh, I'm sick at the moment, and recognizing that your state of balance looks different. Like your natural life looks different. You're just sick at the moment. But maybe if you're just finding yourself feeling bad all the time, maybe that's not who you are. It's just an illness. It's an imbalance. And when you're not feeling that way, you're a completely different person. And so recognizing that can be really helpful, because then you don't castigate yourself and chastise yourself for being an angry person. Instead, you're just a person that's feeling angry at the moment. Maybe you're feeling sad at the moment, or feeling fearful. Oh, I'm a weakling. I'm a coward. People say things like that because they're feeling afraid. Like, who doesn't ever feel afraid? That's ridiculous. But sometimes if we internalize, oh, I'm a coward, then now I can never heal from that, because I've just internalized that process. That's how I deal with everything. Instead of recognizing, oh, something is going on that's making me feel very afraid or very angry, I'm going to do something about it so I can actually be more like myself. And those are really important stages of healing within all this. Sorry, I haven't been reading. I should read. Sorry, I read a bit slowly, so it takes me some time to catch up. Mel is right in the sense that don't react is the same thing as allowing. That we become still, but stillness isn't holding ourselves still. Stillness in the Daoist sense is that you become completely free. You completely disinhibit. You get rid of anything that's obstructing anything so that everything's allowed to settle. So a tree, even when it's windy, the tree is still. It's just allowing the movement. Water that's flowing in a river is actually still. It's just at rest that it's moving downhill. And so we have movement that happens when we let go. And that's the same with emotions. Emotions flow because we're not gripping them. The problems tend to show up when we start to grip and control everything and judge. And so that's often a lot of the difficulty. Yeah. And sometimes we have coping strategies and a lot of addictions and things that people deal with, the cravings that they deal with. Sometimes they make us feel better in the short term, but it's only because, well, sometimes it's because we're addicted, and that's its own separate cycle, and that's hard. So sorry for the people who have addictions. That's worth treating. But sometimes the cravings that we have, they're just little ways that we know how to make ourselves feel better. Some little cycle that we learned when we were 15 or something like that we noticed, oh, this makes me feel a little bit better. And now I associate that thing, whatever it is, with feeling a little bit better. So anytime I start to feel stressed or afraid or something, I do that little thing as a way to feel better. And that's natural. It's normal. And you even want to allow yourself to try to feel better. And if you think of it as medicine, there's some kind of crappy medicines that help a little bit, that have a little bit of positive benefit and a lot of negative side effects. And there's medicines that help a lot and have no side effects. And so sometimes we only know the crappy medication that doesn't make us feel very good, but it helps a little bit. And so we use it because that's all we have. And if you can educate yourself and learn about better medicines that actually help you feel better with no negative side effects, move in that direction if you can. And then when you start to crave it, oh, my neck is stiff. And in the beginning, all people know maybe is how to crack their neck or something, which is not good for you. And then over time, they learn, oh, I can soften my neck, and there's ways of releasing, and I can use my awareness to move chi around. I recognize, oh, it's actually coming from my jaw, or maybe I'm holding my breath, so it's causing my neck to be stiff. Whatever it is, I'm sitting on my tailbone. And so you fix those things. And now you don't have the negative side effects that came from cracking and cranking on your neck. And you get the neck relief at the same time. But you have to learn how to apply those medicines, and it takes time. And it's one of the benefits, again, of getting older and continuing to look for what works better. I think when we're younger, we only have access to a few things because we only know a few things, and we usually don't have a system of help. And so that's why it's really wonderful that so many people are out there looking. We're trying to look to improve, to find better medicine. And medicines like this, sometimes they're more difficult because you have to learn them. You have to develop the skill, but then once you have the skill, you can apply the medicine at any time that you want, and it doesn't have negative side effects. And so I appreciate that people come here to learn this medicine, so now they have it for their whole life. And some things are easier to access, like going for a walk or something like that. And so don't feel bad about applying medicine, just find better medicine. And then you'll find yourself craving those things. Yeah, and even things like unconditional love, those are skills. It's a natural state that it's part of our nature to be unconditionally loving. It's simply that it gets blocked up. It gets covered up by other things. And so by practicing softening and finding this loving, friendly quality and getting better at feeling it for yourself through a practice like this can be hugely impactful. Even if you get 1% better at being a little kind, at uncovering some of that unconditional love, that's a life-changing thing. And then over time, it gets easier and easier. And that's one of those medicines that's, no side effects other than grinning like an idiot. And that's one of those things that really hooked me, because I was a very obsessive, addictive kind of person. And I was always in so much pain. I was very ill, for those of you who don't know, mentally, physically, I was born that way. And I dealt with it my whole life. And then when I learned that I could make myself feel better through Qigong methods or meditation methods, at first they were not healthy versions, but I could use them. Then I became obsessed with applying these methods to myself all the time so I would feel better. And then eventually those had some negative side effects. And so I learned better methods, like the ones I teach now. But at first, you sort of begin to flinch away from anything that causes you further egoic emotional pain. You start to find yourself suffering and you go, why am I suffering? And then you dive into meditative stillness or whatever method you've learned. And you begin to apply that craving to feel better to these methods that we use, the meditative methods and things, so you can actually heal, because you get to find that they actually work better and better. And so you find yourself wanting to do long meditation practices or standing practices or Qigong things because they work better than anything else. And so you wake up and you have a headache and you go, oh man, I'm going to go do some Qigong, because you don't want to have a headache, and it works better than a pill to do a Tai Chi practice or something. But of course, it takes time to develop those medicines. But once you have it, you can change your life anytime you want. And then you go deeper and deeper until you are free, which of course is my recommendation, to become free. Yeah. And Chris, you're mentioning, is it different when you're depressed or fearful the majority of the time? I think that you're asking, like, does that make you who you are? So if I grew up and I had a weakened immune system, like I did, and I was sick all the time, like I was, does that make the illness me? Like, am I just a sick person? Or am I a person who has the capacity to be healthy and I'm out of balance? And so I'm never having the chance to experience my own health. If I define myself as the person who, that's just how I am, then I will never even try to heal, which actually was something that happened. I didn't know that I was sick because that was just how I was. And when we define ourselves that way, it's really limiting. But if I had seen myself, as I really didn't until years later, if I had seen myself as a healthy person who was sick, and all I had to do was heal in order to be myself. I was a crazily anxious person. I was constantly having panic attacks. I had tons of emotional disorders. And what I didn't realize is that that wasn't me. I wasn't really even able to experience my own natural happiness because I was constantly held underwater by these hard feelings. And I thought that that was what I was like. And at some point I realized, actually, no, because I had some experiences. For me, it came through meditation. I know for some other people, it comes through taking drugs or something. And they have this moment of clarity, like, wow, I actually am clear and open and centered as myself. And then they dive back underwater and they feel like they're drowning again. But if you can use that moment as like a North Star to guide you, that you go, oh, that's actually what I'm like. I'm actually this clear-minded, wise, kind person. Most people feel that in themselves, like deep down, they're actually nice people. They're just, submerged under anger or fear or other things. And if you can recognize that, oh, I'm just out of balance. Oh, okay. So you know now what to work toward. If somebody who's had chronic pain, maybe at one point in their life, they felt great. For me, it was the other way around. I was born feeling bad and learned how to feel good. But for a lot of people, they grew up feeling good. And maybe as they age, they start to hurt and things are there. But those people, they usually know, oh, I know what it feels like to be a healthy me. I know what it feels like to be able to go for a run or to dance with no pain. And so they identify themselves with that healthy person who's just being sick right now. And they know which direction to go to get back. And if you're suffering from stress and major mental emotional pain, but you've had a moment of clarity, however you got it, for me, it was from meditation practice, that it's like, oh, that's me. Got it. Now I know how to heal and navigate my way back to there. But it's different if I identify with the mess. Now I never even try to get out. I don't know where to look. So if you've had a moment of clarity, don't forget it. You know what you're actually like. And now you aim toward that. That's my recommendation, at least that piece of it. And again, it's difficult to help somebody that I'm not sitting with. But these are kind of universal principles. So I hope that helps. That's right. Okay. And Mel, if you're there, if you have any more advice, feel free to offer it. And if you guys feel like chatting in the chat box for a while, remember that even after I sign off, this is here for you to continue chatting if you want to build community that way. And if people want to share your email address, this chat doesn't end up on YouTube in general. It's only for the people who were here. And so feel free to reach out to each other and share, because everybody who's in this knows what it's like. And building community as a way to connect is part of the reason for these practices, because we don't heal by ourselves. And so building community is a way of learning how to heal. It's just part of being human. Even for super introverts like Mel and I, even we have community. And so look toward the people around you, connect with them, find people who help lift you up, and spend time with them. And then that's one way to heal, because as a creature, we are social beings. And as an organism, it's like we're a multiplicity, and we all balance each other by working with each other, not alone. That's a kind of strength. Vulnerability is a strength. Yeah. Enjoy your practice.